I will never forget the weight of that plastic badge in my hand. It was Christmas morning. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey. Carols played softly from the living room. Everything looked perfect. Like a scene from a holiday card. But I was standing in the kitchen, staring down at a badge that read, Housekeeper. My daughter-in-law, Jane, had just handed it to me. She smiled when she did it. A bright, confident smile. The kind that makes you wonder if you're overreacting. If you're being too sensitive. Here, Victoria, she said. I made this for you. So everyone knows how hard you're working today. I looked at that badge. The letters were crooked. Printed on cheap paper and covered in scratched laminate. It looked like something you'd make for a child's pretend game. But this wasn't pretend. I was 70 years old. I had raised 2 children. I had built a business from nothing. I had spent 50 years of my life loving, sacrificing, and holding my family together. And now I was being handed a badge. Like I was the help. Like I needed a label to explain why I was in my own home. I didn't say anything. I just held it. My fingers trembled a little, but I kept my face calm. Behind me, I could hear voices in the dining room. Laughter. The clink of glasses. My husband, Mark, was talking to Caleb about something. Business, probably. They were always talking about business now. I turned and walked toward the dining room, carrying a tray of mashed potatoes. My hands were steady. My breath was steady. But inside, something was breaking. And when I stepped through that doorway, I saw it. There was no seat for me at the table. Not one. Every chair was filled. My husband sat at one end. My son sat at the other. Jane sat beside Caleb, her hand resting on his arm. Their guests filled the remaining seats. The table was set beautifully. White linen. Gold-rimmed plates. Candles flickering. But there was no place for me. I stood there, holding that tray, and felt the room go quiet. Someone cleared their throat. Jane adjusted her napkin. Mark glanced at me, then looked away. I set the tray down carefully. My voice came out softer than I expected. Where am I supposed to sit? No one answered right away. Then my son, Caleb, looked up at me. He didn't meet my eyes. He looked somewhere past my shoulder. Foods for family, Mom. 4 words. That's all it took. For words to tell me I didn't belong. That I wasn't family. That I was just the woman who cooked the food and cleaned the plates and kept everything running. I looked at my husband. Mark was staring at his wine glass. He said nothing. I looked at my son. He said nothing either. And in that silence, I understood. I had spent my whole life believing that love was sacrifice. That family meant putting others first. That if I worked hard enough, if I stayed quiet enough, if I gave enough, I would be valued. But I was wrong. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a wife. I was furniture. Expected. Useful. But not worth protecting. So I reached up and unpinned that badge from my sweater. I set it on the table, right next to the turkey. Then I took off my wedding ring. I hadn't removed it in 50 years. But I slid it off my finger and placed it beside the badge. I looked at my husband. I looked at my son. And I said, very quietly, you just lost everything. Then I turned and walked out the door. That I didn't grab my coat. I didn't take my purse. I just walked out the front door and kept walking. My car was parked in the driveway. I got in. I started the engine. And I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Behind me, I heard the front door open. I heard someone shout my name. I think it was Caleb. Maybe Mark. I didn't look back. My phone started ringing before I even reached the end of the street. I glanced at the screen. Mark. I let it ring. It rang again. Caleb this time. I turned the sound off. I drove for 20 minutes before I realized I was shaking. My hands were tight on the wheel. My chest felt like something was sitting on it. I pulled into a gas station and sat there in the parking lot, staring at the dashboard. What had I just done? I had walked out on Christmas dinner. I had left my husband. I had told my son he lost everything. But what had I really lost? A seat at a table where no one saw me. A home where I was treated like staff. A marriage where my voice didn't matter. I started the car again. I kept driving. Eventually, I saw a sign for a motel. It was small. Plain. The kind of place you'd pass without noticing. I pulled in. I walked to the front desk. The man behind the counter looked up and smiled. Just you tonight? I nodded. Just me. He handed me a key. Room 12. I took it and walked down the outdoor hallway. The air was cold. My breath made clouds. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was simple. A bed. A chair. A small TV. A bathroom with a cracked mirror. But it was quiet. I sat down on the edge of the bed and finally let myself cry. Not loud, angry sobs. Just quiet tears that slid down my face and wouldn't stop. Because I wasn't crying about the badge. Or the missing chair. Or even the way my son had looked at me. I was crying because I had let it happen. I had stayed silent for so long that my silence became permission. Permission to ignore me. To disrespect me. To erase me. And now I had to figure out who I was without them. Set up, the life we built from nothing. My name is Victoria Harper. I am 70 years old. And for most of my life, I believed that love meant sacrifice. I learned that from my mother. She never raised her voice. Never complained. She kept our home running smoothly, even when my father forgot her birthday. Even when money was tight. Even when she was exhausted. She used to tell me, a good woman holds her family together, Victoria. No matter what. So when I married Mark Harper at 22, I thought I knew what I was supposed to do. Be supportive. Be patient. Be the glue. And for a long time, I thought that's what I was. Mark and I met in 1975 at a church picnic. He was 24. He had just finished trade school and was working construction. He had big hands, a kind smile, and a dream. He wanted to open a hardware store. A place where people could come for tools, advice, and a fair price. He wanted to build something that mattered. I wanted that too. We got married that fall in a small ceremony. We couldn't afford much. Just a simple dress, a rented hall, and a cake my aunt made. But it felt like enough. It felt like the beginning of something good. We lived in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. The floors creaked. The water heater barely worked. But we didn't care. We were building something. We worked every day. Mark took extra shifts. I worked at a diner, saving every tip. At night, we'd sit at our little kitchen table and plan. We'd sketch out store layouts on napkins. We'd talk about what kind of business we wanted to build. 2 years later, we had saved enough. We opened Harper's Home Supply. It was small. Just one room with narrow aisles and shelves we built ourselves. The cash register was old and stuck half the time. But it was ours. Mark handled the tools. The lumber. The heavy equipment. He was good with his hands. Good with people. I handled everything else. The books. The orders. The schedules. I was the one who stayed late to restock. The one who answered the phone at 6 in the morning when someone needed an emergency repair. The one who remembered every customer's name. I didn't just work there. I built it. Right alongside Mark. And when our children came, I kept building. Rebecca was born first. She was quiet, thoughtful, always reading. She loved books more than hammers. She grew up helping in the store, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. She wanted something else. Something bigger. She went to college. Became a teacher. Married a kind man named Eric. They moved to Oregon. We didn't see her much. But when we did, she was always gentle. Always grateful. Then Caleb was born. Caleb was loud. Confident. Charming. Customers loved him. Mark adored him. From the time Caleb was 10, he'd say, "One day, Dad, I'm going to run this place. I'm going to make it bigger than you ever imagined." And Mark would smile. He'd ruffle Caleb's hair and say, "I believe you, son." I believed him too. I thought that one day, Caleb would take over the store. That he would see the value in what we had built. That he would honor the years of work and sacrifice that went into every sale, every customer relationship, every decision. I thought family meant loyalty. I was wrong. Caleb didn't go into the hardware business. He went to college and studied business management. He wanted to work in consulting, he said. Corporate strategy. He wanted to travel. He wanted to wear a suit and make 6 figures. Mark was disappointed, but he didn't say much. Let the boy find his path, he told me. So Caleb found his path. And on that path, he found Jane. Jane Whitmore came from money. Not regular money. Real money. The kind that comes with vacation homes and trust funds and expectations. When Caleb first brought her home, I tried. I really did. I made her favorite dessert. I asked about her work. I smiled when she talked about her family's properties and their country club memberships. But Jane had a way of making you feel small without ever saying anything cruel. She'd walk through our home and straighten a picture frame. She'd glance at my outfit and say, "Oh, that's so comfortable." She'd talk about her mother's interior designer. Her father's business connections. The right way to do things. And slowly, I started to feel like nothing I did was quite good enough. Caleb and Jane got married 2 years later. The wedding was expensive. Very expensive. Mark insisted we help pay for it. I didn't argue. I wanted Caleb to be happy. But after the wedding, things changed. Caleb started talking about the store differently. He'd say things like, "You know, Dad, if you modernize the inventory system, you could cut costs." Or, "Jane's father says small businesses like this are dying. You should think about selling." Mark would nod. He'd listen. And slowly, he started agreeing. I'd try to speak up. I'd say, "We've built something good here. Something stable." But Mark would wave me off. "Caleb's got a good head for business, Vicky. We should listen." It started to feel like my voice didn't matter anymore. Like my 50 years of work were just background noise. Then one day, Caleb and Jane came to us with a proposal. They wanted us to buy them a house. Not a small house. A large, beautiful house in the nicest neighborhood in town. They said it was an investment. That property values were going up. That it was smart. I made her favorite dessert. I asked about her work. I smiled when she talked about her family's properties and their country club memberships. But Jane had a way of making you feel small without ever saying anything cruel. She'd walk through our home and straighten a picture frame. She'd glance at my outfit and say, "Oh, that's so comfortable." She'd talk about her mother's interior designer, her father's business connections, the right way to do things. And slowly, I started to feel like nothing I did was quite good enough. Caleb and Jane got married 2 years later. The wedding was expensive. Very expensive. Mark insisted we help pay for it. I didn't argue. I wanted Caleb to be happy. But after the wedding, things changed. Caleb started talking about the store differently. He'd say things like, "You know, Dad, if you modernize the inventory system, you could cut costs." Or, "Jane's father says small businesses like this are dying. You should think about selling." Mark would nod. He'd listen. And slowly, he started agreeing. I'd try to speak up. I'd say, "We've built something good here. Something stable." But Mark would wave me off. "Caleb's got a good head for business, Vicky. We should listen." It started to feel like my voice didn't matter anymore. Like my 50 years of work were just background noise. Then one day, Caleb and Jane came to us with a proposal. They wanted us to buy them a house. Not a small house. A large, beautiful house in the nicest neighborhood in town. They said it was an investment. That property values were going up. That it was smart. Jane smiled and said, "You'd be helping us get started, and it's really a good financial move for you too." Mark was hesitant. I could see it. We didn't have that kind of money sitting around. But Caleb leaned forward and said, "Dad, you've worked your whole life. Don't you want to help me build something too?" And just like that, Mark agreed. I didn't fight it. I should have. But I didn't. Instead, I made one request. I said, "If we're buying the house, the deed stays in my name." Caleb frowned. Jane's smile tightened. But they agreed. So we bought the house. It cost more than I wanted to spend. But we did it. And then, a year later, they came back. They were expecting a baby. Their first child. Jane was overwhelmed, they said. The house was so big. They needed help. Would we consider moving in? Just temporarily. Just to help with the baby. We could stay in the guest suite. It would be easier for everyone. Mark thought it was a wonderful idea. I wasn't sure. But I didn't say no. So we sold our home. The home we had lived in for 30 years. The home where we had raised our children. We packed everything up and moved into the guest suite of the house we had bought for Caleb and Jane. I told myself it was temporary. That we were helping. That this was what family did. But it didn't feel temporary. It felt like we were shrinking. Like we were becoming smaller and smaller until we disappeared. At first, living with Caleb and Jane wasn't so bad. I got to see my grandson every day. Little Mason. He was beautiful. Tiny fingers. Big eyes. A smile that could light up a room. I loved him instantly. Jane asked me to watch him sometimes while she ran errands. I was happy to. I'd hold him. Sing to him. Rock him to sleep. But then the requests started to grow. "Victoria, could you pick up some groceries while you're out? Victoria, do you mind folding this laundry? Victoria, could you make dinner tonight? I'm just so exhausted." I didn't mind helping. I really didn't. Family helps each other. But somewhere along the way, helping turned into expecting. I wasn't asked anymore. I was told. Victoria, we need the kitchen cleaned before the guests arrive. Victoria, Mason needs to be picked up from daycare at 3. Victoria, can you handle the dry cleaning? I became the person who did things. Not the person who was asked. Not the person who was thanked. Just the person who did things. Mark didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and he didn't care. He spent most of his time at the store. Or on the couch watching TV. He seemed content. Comfortable. But I felt like I was disappearing. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen putting away groceries. Jane was on the phone in the next room. I wasn't trying to listen. But I heard her. "Oh, we're managing," she said. "We have help. Mark's mother lives with us. She's basically staff. It's convenient." Staff. She called me staff. I stood there, holding a box of cereal, and felt something crack inside me. I wasn't her mother-in-law. I wasn't family. I was staff. I didn't say anything. I put the cereal away. I finished the groceries. I went to my room and sat on the bed. And I realized I didn't even know what my room looked like anymore. I had lived there for 2 years, but I couldn't remember the last time I had just sat in it. Just existed in it. I was always doing something. Always moving. Always working. I had become invisible. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I thought that was the lowest point. Being called staff. Being treated like I didn't matter. But I was wrong. The real betrayal came a few weeks later. I was at the store. I still went there sometimes. Not to work, really. Just to check in. To feel like I was still part of something. I was in the back office, looking for an old invoice, when I saw a document on Mark's desk. It was a legal form. I almost didn't read it. But something made me stop. It was a transfer of authority. For the business. Harper's Home Supply. Mark had signed over managing authority to Caleb. Not joint authority. Not shared responsibility. Full control. Without telling me. I stood there, staring at that paper, and felt the floor drop out from under me. This business wasn't just Mark's. It was mine too. I had built it. I had worked 60-hour weeks. I had kept it running when times were hard. I had made decisions, handled problems, earned every dollar. And Mark had given it away. To our son. Without asking me. Without even telling me. I found Mark in the front of the store, talking to a customer. I waited until the customer left. Then I held up the document. "What is this?" Mark glanced at it. He sighed. Like I was bothering him. "It's time, Vicky. Caleb's ready to step up. You didn't ask me. I'm asking you now." "No. You're telling me. You already signed it." Mark rubbed his face. He looked tired. Annoyed. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult? Caleb's our son. He's smart. He knows business. It's time to let him take over. This is my business too. And you'll still be part of it." "How?" "You just gave him full control." "How am I part of it?" Mark's jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic. Caleb's not going to push you out. He's family. So am I. You're being too hard on him, Vicky. You always have been. He's trying to build something here, and you're acting like he's stealing from us." I stared at my husband. The man I had spent 50 years beside. The man I had sacrificed for, worked for, built a life with. And I realized he didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a supporting character. Someone who helped. Someone who stayed in the background. Someone who didn't get a say. I folded the document and set it on the counter. You should have asked me. Mark shook his head. You'll get over it. But I didn't. I went home that day and sat in the guest suite. My room. My small, quiet room where I had been living for 2 years. I thought about everything. The business. The house. The way Jane spoke to me. The way Caleb looked past me. The way Mark had stopped seeing me. And I realized something terrible. This wasn't just something they had done to me. This was something I had allowed. I had stayed quiet when Jane made comments. I had smiled when Caleb dismissed my opinions. I had nodded when Mark made decisions without me. I had convinced myself that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for myself. I had believed that love meant sacrifice. That being a good wife, a good mother, meant putting everyone else first. But what had I sacrificed? My voice. My dignity. My sense of self that I had given and given and given until there was nothing left. Until I was invisible. And the people I loved most had taken everything I offered and asked for more. They didn't value me. Because I had taught them not to. I sat on that bed and felt something shift inside me. Something hard and cold and certain. I was done. I was done being quiet. Done being invisible. Done being the woman who held everything together while everyone else moved forward. I was done. But I didn't know what to do about it. Not yet. Not until Christmas. Christmas was supposed to be special that year. Jane had planned everything. A big dinner. Guests. Decorations. She'd been talking about it for weeks. She asked me to help, of course. Cook the side dishes. Set the table. Clean up. I said yes. Because that's what I always did. The morning started early. I was in the kitchen by 6, preparing food. Peeling potatoes. Chopping vegetables. Basting the turkey. Mark was still asleep. Caleb and Jane were upstairs with Mason. I worked alone. The house was quiet. Peaceful, almost. But then Jane came downstairs. She was dressed beautifully. Hair perfect. Makeup perfect. She smiled at me. Good morning, Victoria. Everything looks wonderful. Thank you. She poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter. I wanted to give you something. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a plastic badge. The kind you'd clip to a shirt. I made this for you, she said. So everyone knows how hard you're working today. She handed it to me. I looked down at it. Said, housekeeper. I stared at it. My fingers tightened around the edge. Jane was still smiling. I thought it would be fun. You know, festive. I didn't say anything. I just held it. Go ahead, Jane said. Pin it on. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw it. She didn't think she was being cruel. She thought this was clever. Funny, even. She thought I was the help. And she wanted everyone else to know it too. I took the badge. I set it on the counter. I'll think about it, I said quietly. Jane shrugged. Suit yourself. She walked away, coffee in hand, humming along to the Christmas music. And I stood there, staring at that badge, and felt the last piece of something inside me break. An hour later, the guests started arriving. Jane's parents. Mark's brother. A few friends from Caleb's work. The house filled with voices. Laughter. The clinking of glasses. Christmas music played. Everything looked perfect. I finished the mashed potatoes and carried them to the dining room. That's when I saw it. The table was set. Beautifully. White linens. Gold plates. Candles flickering. The turkey sat in the center, golden and perfect. But there was no seat for me. Every chair was filled. Mark at one end. Caleb at the other. Jane beside him. Guests filled the rest. But no seat for me. I stood there, holding the tray. My heart pounding. Where am I supposed to sit? The room went quiet. Someone coughed. Jane adjusted her napkin. Mark glanced at me, then looked away. And then my son, my Caleb, looked up. He didn't meet my eyes. He said, "Food's for family, Mom." I felt those words like a slap. I set the tray down. Carefully. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. I reached up and unpinned the badge Jane had given me. I set it on the table. Then I took off my wedding ring. I hadn't removed it in 50 years. But I slid it off my finger and placed it beside the badge. I looked at Mark. He was staring at his plate. I looked at Caleb. He still wouldn't look at me. I said, very quietly, "You just lost everything." Then I turned and walked out. I didn't take my coat. I didn't grab my purse. I just walked out the front door and got in my car. Behind me, I heard shouting. The door opened. Someone called my name. I didn't look back. I started the engine and drove. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mark. I didn't answer. It rang again. Caleb. I turned the sound off. I drove for miles. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Eventually, I pulled into a gas station. I sat there, hands on the wheel, and realized I was shaking. What had I just done? I had left my family. On Christmas. I had walked out on a table full of people. But what had I really left? A family that didn't see me. A husband who didn't value me. A son who didn't respect me. I had left nothing. Because I had already been nothing to them. I started the car and kept driving. I found a small motel on the edge of town. The kind of place you don't notice. I walked inside. A man at the front desk looked up. "Just you?" I nodded. "Just me." He gave me a key. Room 12. I walked down the hallway. The air was cold. My breath fogged. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was plain. A bed. A chair. A TV. A small bathroom. But it was quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed. And I cried, not loud. Not angry. Just quiet, steady tears. Because I wasn't crying about the badge or the missing chair. I was crying because I had let it happen. I had stayed silent so long that my silence became permission. But I was done being silent now that I stayed in that motel room for 3 days. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check messages. I just sat. Thought. Rested. On the second day, I finally looked at my phone. There were dozens of missed calls. Voicemails. Texts. Most were from Mark. "Where are you? Come home. We need to talk. You're being ridiculous." A few were from Caleb. "Mom, please call me." I didn't mean it like that. "You're overreacting." I read them all. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just clarity. They didn't understand. They thought this was about a seat at the table. About a badge. But this was about 50 years of being unseen. 50 years of sacrifice without recognition. 50 years of giving everything and being told it wasn't enough. This was about me finally realizing that I mattered. On the third day, I called my daughter, Rebecca. Mom? Her voice was worried. Dad called me. He said you left. Are you okay? I took a breath. I'm okay. What happened? I told her. Not everything. Just enough. The badge. The missing seat. The way Caleb had spoken to me. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm so sorry, Mom. It's not your fault. I should have seen it. I should have said something. I should have said something too. Rebecca paused. What are you going to do? I looked around the small motel room. I don't know yet. But I'm not going back. Not like before. Good, Rebecca said. You deserve better. Hearing her say that made something inside me settle. Someone saw me. Someone understood. We talked for an hour. She told me I could come stay with her in Oregon if I wanted. That I didn't have to face this alone. I thanked her. I told her I'd think about it. But I didn't want to run to Oregon. I wanted to face this. I wanted to take back what was mine. On the fourth day, I went to see a lawyer. His name was David Chen. He was young, professional, and he listened. I told him everything. The house. The business. The way Mark had transferred authority without telling me. David took notes. He asked questions. And then he said, you have options. What kind of options? The house is in your name. You have the legal right to it. You could sell it. You could ask them to leave. What about the business? That's more complicated. But if you were never consulted on the transfer of authority, you may have grounds to challenge it. I sat back in my chair. I don't want to destroy anything. I just want them to see me. David nodded. Then let's make sure they do. We spent the next hour going over documents. Papers I had signed. Papers Mark had signed. The deed to the house. The business contracts. David pointed out something I hadn't realized. The house deed was only in my name. Mark wasn't on it. I had insisted on that when we bought it, as protection. At the time, I thought I was being smart. I didn't realize how smart. You own the house outright, David said. They're living in your property. I thought about that. Caleb and Jane. Living in a house I owned. Treating me like staff in my own home. What do I do? You decide. You have all the power here, Mrs. Harper. They just don't know it yet. I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. That I called Mark that evening. He answered on the first ring. Vicky. Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine. You need to come home. We need to talk. I agree. We do need to talk. Then come home. No. Meet me tomorrow. At the coffee shop on Main Street. 10 o'clock. Vicky. 10 o'clock, Mark. If you want to fix this, you'll be there. I hung up. The next morning, I arrived early. I ordered coffee and sat by the window. I watched people walk by. I felt calm. Steady. Mark arrived 10 minutes late. He looked tired. stressed. He sat down across from me. What's going on, Vicky? What is all this? This is me standing up for myself. Mark frowned. Standing up? You walked out on Christmas dinner. You disappeared for days. You scared the hell out of me. Did I? Or did you just realize how much I do? He blinked. What? When I left, who cooked? Who cleaned? Who watched Mason? Mark didn't answer. I've spent 50 years holding this family together, Mark. And somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your partner. You started seeing me as convenient. That's not true. You gave Caleb control of the business. Without asking me. That was business. It's my business too. I built it just as much as you did. Mark rubbed his face. I thought you'd be happy. I thought you'd want Caleb to take over. I wanted to be asked. I wanted my opinion to matter. Mark was quiet. He stared at his coffee cup. I didn't know you felt this way. I've been telling you for years. You just weren't listening. He looked up. So what now? You're just done. I don't know. But things can't stay the way they were. What do you want? I want you to see me. I want Caleb to respect me. I want to stop being invisible. Mark reached across the table. I do see you. I pulled my hand back. No, you don't. Not anymore. We sat in silence for a while. Then Mark said, I'll fix this. I'll talk to Caleb. It's not just Caleb. It's you too. I know. He sighed. I know. I stood up. I'll be staying with Rebecca for a while. I need time. And space. When are you coming back? I don't know if I am. Mark's face went pale. Vicky. I'll let you know. I walked out that I flew to Oregon the next week. Rebecca picked me up at the airport. She hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Mom. For what? For leaving. We drove to her house. It was small, cozy, surrounded by trees. I stayed in her guest room. It had a big window that looked out over the forest. I spent my days walking. Thinking. Reading. I cooked when I wanted to. I rested when I was tired. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have tasks. I just existed. And slowly, I started to remember who I was. Not Mark's wife. Not Caleb's mother. Not Jane's housekeeper, just Victoria. After a month, Mark called. He asked if he could visit. I said yes. He flew out the next week. We sat on Rebecca's porch and talked. Really talked. He apologized. He said he'd been wrong. That he hadn't seen how much I'd given up. How much I'd carried. He said he wanted to fix things. I told him I didn't know if things could be fixed. But I was willing to try. We're taking it slow. Day by day. Caleb called too. He apologized for what he said. He didn't understand, he said, how much it hurt me. I told him I loved him. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. He's trying. I think. Time will tell. As for the house, I made a decision. I'm selling it. Caleb and Jane can buy it from me if they want. Or they can find somewhere else. But it's not theirs anymore. It's mine. And I'm done giving pieces of myself away. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Mark and I will rebuild. Maybe I'll stay in Oregon. Maybe I'll do something completely different. But for the first time in 50 years, I feel like I have a choice. I'm not invisible anymore. And I never will be again.